This video is on how to persuade others to think like you. This video is about how to persuade others to think like you. The content of the video is going to be examining and looking at how to write a good persuasive paragraph. It is going to look at the structure of the persuasive paragraph, that being the topic sentence, arguments and supports, and the concluding sentence. It will also cover transition words and phrases, as well as the do's and don'ts of persuasive writing. So let's get started. This persuasive paragraph is a well-structured paragraph. At the moment, I'm going to read it to you, and then we're going to examine it. There is no doubt that Central Peel has the best football team in the league this year. In the first place, they have the most explosive offense in the league. The average of 21 points per game proves this. Also, the Griffins' defense is outstanding. It has allowed fewer yards per game rushing than any other team in the league and has given up only 10 touchdowns in 15 games. Furthermore, when the score is close and the end is near, the Griffins always deliver that clutch play to win the game. Finally, their record of 15-0 is the best in the league. In conclusion, the evidence presented above proves that the Griffins are the best in the league. So there you have it, a good structured paragraph. So why is it so well structured? Well, first let's take a look at the topic sentence. The topic sentence in a persuasive paragraph is always found as the first sentence. So let's take a look at that. There is no doubt that Central Peel is the best football team in the league this year. Why is this such a great topic sentence? Because it only deals with one subject matter. It doesn't deal with anything else. And this topic sentence introduces the subject that you are trying to prove. In the entire paragraph, you are only trying to prove this one point. They don't use words like and or because. If you find those words in a topic sentence, then you don't have a very good topic sentence. Now, let's look at the first argument of the topic sentence. The first argument is always found right after the topic sentence, and it supports the topic sentence. In this case, the very next sentence, here it is. In the first place, they have the most explosive offense in the league. Well, what about that second sentence? What about that very next sentence? Well, the average of 21 points per game proves this. Now, this sentence represents the facts backing the first argument. This is what we call the proof of the first argument. It's extremely important. Yes, it could be argued that this is the first argument, but notice the difference. First, you introduce the argument, and then you supply the proof. So where are you going to find the second argument? Right after the first argument and its proof. And here it is. Also, the Griffins' defense is outstanding. And take a look at that very next sentence after that one. Why, lo and behold, it is the proof. It has allowed fewer yards per game rushing than any other team in the league and has given up only 10 touchdowns in 15 games. Yep, that's the proof. That's the proof of the second argument, making it an excellent second argument. Okay, so now let's look at the third argument. Where would you find that? Right after the second argument. And there it is. Furthermore, when the score is close and the end is near, the Griffins always deliver that clutch play to win the game. Now, there's a problem with this sentence. I put it in here deliberately. And the reason there's a problem is because there's absolutely no proof. This makes the argument very weak. When you have a weak argument and it's more a touchy-feely argument, then what you want to do is you want to bury it somewhere. You don't want to make it your first argument. You don't want to make it your last argument. In this case, it's the third argument in this four-argumentative persuasive paragraph. So it's in a good spot, even though it's a weak argument. So now let's look at the fourth argument, and here it is. Finally, the record of 15-0 is the best in the league. Now notice this time the next sentence does not support this, but it still has support. The argument is supported. This time the facts are buried in with the argument. Their record of 15-0, right in the sentence. So you don't always have to have the support as the next sentence. If you can put a statistics or something in that supports your point right in that paragraph, then do it. So this, of course, makes a gain for a very strong argument. So the final part of a persuasive paragraph, after you've done all the arguing and all the supports, is to write a conclusion. The conclusion should link back to the topic sentence. So take a look at this conclusion. Here it is, very last sentence. In conclusion, the evidence presented above proves that the Griffins are the best in the league. So as a result, this is an excellent structured paragraph. Let's take a look why. Topic sentence. There is no doubt that Central Peel is the best football team in the league this year. First argument. In the first place, they have the most explosive offense in the league. Support for the argument. The average of 21 points per game proves this. Second argument. Also, the Griffins' defense is outstanding. Proof. There it is. It has allowed fewer yards per game rushing than any other team in the league and has given up only 10 touchdowns in 15 games. Third argument. Furthermore, when the score is close and the end is near, the Griffins always deliver that clutch play to win the game. Unfortunately, a poor argument because there's no proof. Next argument. Finally, the record of 15-0 is the best in the league. Where's the proof? Right in the argument. The concluding sentence. In conclusion, the evidence presented above proves that the Griffins are the best in the league. Notice that the topic sentence said the topic sentence says Central Peel is the best football team in the league. The concluding sentence says the Griffins are the best in the league. They are completely linked. That is a well-structured paragraph. But there's more than just following the simple structure of a persuasive paragraph. You have to also understand that there are something called transition words or phrases. Now, when it comes to the transition words or phrases, they are very important because they introduce everything that is new in your persuasive paragraph. They introduce the topic sentence, they introduce each argument, and they introduce the concluding sentence. Okay, so let's get started with our transition words and just take a look right at the very beginning at the topic sentence. The transition word for this particular one is there is no doubt. Now that's my favorite one. I love using that one because I find it very, very convincing to introduce my topic. There are other ones you can use. For example, you could use the phrase it is strongly believed, which still work. Or you could use it is believed that, or there is no doubt, or it is understood that. These are all strong transition phrases or words that can introduce the topic sentence. One cannot argue with the fact that these are good words. So now we've looked at the transition words for the topic sentence. Let's now take a look at the transition words that we use for the arguments. Now notice that the very first argument uses in the first place. I quickly scan my paragraph and look at that. There's another word introducing my second argument. That would be also. I scan my paragraph very quickly. My third argument uses the word furthermore. And then my last argument, it uses the word finally because it is my last argument. So let's look at some other transition words that we can use to introduce the arguments. Well, we already talked about furthermore, finally, also, and in the first place. Those were the ones that were in that paragraph. But there are more. At last is a good one. To begin with, in addition to, next, after that, first, secondly. Now I want to stop right here. I have a lot of students use the word firstly, secondly, thirdly, etc. Do not use the word firstly. There is no such word. The word is only first. So it's first, secondly, and lastly. Now, this I often get, and it's quite funny. Sometimes I get first, secondly, lastly, thirdly. Now, that's kind of silly order, but those are people who rush through it and don't realize what they've done. If you're going to use the word lastly, make sure it's your last argument, not your fourth argument to come. First of all, primarily, these are all very good transition words. In fact, I use many of them all the time. Now that we've looked at the argumentative transition words, let's take a look at some concluding transition words. This one was fairly simple in this paragraph we looked at. In this case, the word is simply in conclusion. The other transition words that introduce the conclusion are things like this proves, to conclude, in conclusion, To sum up, therefore the evidence presented above, thus the evidence presented above proves that. These are all excellent transition words. So let's take a quick look at the transition words in the paragraph. The first one, topic sentence. There is no doubt. First argument, in the first place. Second argument, also. Third argument, furthermore. Fourth argument, finally. And the last transition word is a concluding sentence, in conclusion. So there you can see how important transition words are. When it introduces a new thought, there they are used. Transition words, I cannot emphasize how important they are, and many people leave them out. So there are some rules. Never do the following when writing a persuasive paragraph. Do not use I. Do not ask a question. A question is wrong. When you ask a question, you're inviting someone to interrupt your train of thought. Don't do it. Even if it's a hypothetical question, just don't do it. But do write in present tense. The paragraph that we just looked at, this paragraph right here, this paragraph was actually taken out of the yearbook from 1972. But if you read it, it is as relevant today as it was back then because it was written in the present tense. And finally, do write in third person. Do not write in first or second person. Always write in third person. Okay, to sum up this video, or to finalize this video, I want to talk about how teachers often mark a video. Well, they look at the structure. First off, they like looking at linking words. So if you have a topic sentence, linking words introducing the topic sentence would get you 1 mark. A topic sentence would get you 1 mark. Linking words for the first argument would get you 1 mark. First argument would get you 1 mark. Support for the argument would get you 1 mark. And this repeats. Linking word for the second argument would get you 1 mark. Second argument would get you 1 mark. Support for the argument would get you 1 mark. Linking word for the third argument would get you a mark. Third argument would get you a mark. And support for the argument would get you a mark. And this is basically, you could see now that the arguments are important and they get marks. And if you had a fourth argument, and you would have to have a linking word for it, you would have to have a third argument and then support. And those 3 marks just continue with each little area you introduce. Then finally, when you have a conclusion, you need a linking word to introduce a conclusion, and you need a concluding sentence. That's basically the structure of a paragraph. And yes, teachers are variable on how they mark, but that's basically what they're looking for. And if you can, in your mind, think, okay, I got that, I got that, I got that, you're getting marks. Now, of course, that's not the only thing in the writing of a persuasive paragraph. You can never forget the importance of grammar and spelling. And often, teachers will give that worth more. In this case, maybe it's worth 5 marks. If I were marking this persuasive paragraph, that's probably some kind of structure which I would follow. So you can see how you can get your marks. Well, I'd like to thank you for listening and hope this video helped you, and I hope you have a very good day.